Every zoo has an enclosure for what it can control. This one doesn't. Welcome to the Nightmare Zoo, where every episode is a cage that doesn't hold. Cryptids, sightings, the things people swear they saw and wish they hadn't. We don't dress it up. We don't need to. The truth is strange enough on its own. If you're new here, subscribe, ring the bell, and don't wander too far from the light. The Skinwalker Ranch Files. What they don't show you. In 1996, a family bought a 480-acre ranch in the Uintah Basin of Utah. Within months, they wanted out. Cattle disappeared without a trace of blood. Strange lights moved against the wind, in patterns no aircraft should have been able to fly. And something the family never fully agreed on what watched them from the tree line at night. This isn't a story about monsters. It's a story about what happens when a place becomes impossible to explain and impossible to leave alone. Before it had a name, it was just land. The Uintah Basin sits in northeastern Utah, a stretch of high desert bordered by mountains, ringed by the Uintah and Uray Reservation, home to the Ute Indian tribe for generations. It's a place with a long, layered human history, one that existed centuries before a ranch, a family, or a television crew ever set foot on it. And according to oral traditions carried by tribes across this region, this land was never considered empty. Stories passed down through generations describe an entity capable of taking many forms, moving between animal and human shape, watched but never fully seen. The concept of a skinwalker comes from real, living spiritual belief, most specifically documented within Navajo tradition, and it is not folklore invented for entertainment. It describes something taken seriously as a spiritual and cultural reality, not a campfire story. So when a ranching family bought this property in the mid-1990s, they weren't just buying dirt, fencing, and grazing rights. They were buying into a story that was already centuries old. The family's account begins simply enough. A working ranch, cattle, wide open sky. Then, according to their own later statements, things started happening that a ranching operation isn't built to handle. Cattle were reportedly found dead with precise, almost surgical wounds, and no blood at the scene. Not hard to find. Absent. According to the family, veterinarians who examined the animals couldn't offer an explanation that satisfied them. At night, they described lights, not the kind you'd mistake for a car on a distant road, but lights that reportedly moved in ways aircraft don't move, hovering, then vanishing, then reappearing somewhere else entirely. And then there were the animals that weren't quite animals. As later reported to researchers, family members described large, canine-like creatures at the property's edges, creatures that, and according to their accounts, absorbed direct gunfire without so much as flinching. The family didn't rush to tell this story publicly. It took years, and eventually a book, before their account reached a wider audience. And once it did, the property itself changed hands. Twice. In the late 1990s, the ranch was purchased by a research-oriented ownership group, reportedly drawn by the family's account and interested in studying the property directly. A dedicated investigative team was formed, bringing in scientific equipment, sensors, and a formal methodology to try to document whatever was actually happening there. According to those associated with the research, the phenomena they studied spanned a wide range: unexplained aerial lights, magnetic anomalies, and continued reports of animal activity that didn't fit ordinary explanations. Eventually, the property changed hands again, this time to a media and entertainment company, and the ranch's story shifted from private investigation into television production. That transition matters, because it raises a question worth sitting with. How much of what the public now knows about this ranch came from evidence gathered in the field, and how much of it came from what makes for compelling television? Here's the thing about this ranch's story that rarely gets said out loud. It isn't actually unique. Strip away the branding, the television deals, the merchandise, and what you're left with is one location inside a much larger pattern. Reports of unexplained cattle deaths with no obvious cause have been logged across the American West since at least the 1970s. Unexplained aerial lights near sparsely populated land, sometimes near military test sites, have their own long, separate history entirely. And shape-shifting entities that move between human and animal form appear across dozens of unrelated cultures on nearly every continent, long before anyone had a name for a ranch in Utah. So the real question isn't whether something happened on that specific 480 acres. It's why this exact pattern, animal deaths, unexplained lights, glimpses of something that shouldn't be able to move the way it moves, keeps showing up in different places, told by people with no connection to each other. Coincidence, shared psychology, folklore quietly shaping how people interpret ordinary strange events, or something we genuinely don't have language for yet. Whatever walked that land in 1996, legend, misidentification, or something without a name, it's still pulling people in almost 30 years later. Maybe that's the actual story here. Not what was out there in the dark, but why we still can't stop looking for it.